The international break is nearly over, which means it's time to talk about players to buy and avoid for Game Week 5. Now, it wouldn't be a Game Week 5 video without talking about Heung-min Son, but is he really worth putting into your team? Well, I think the unfortunate answer is yes and no. I mean, he appears to be back to full fitness, and I think at the left wing under the Ange Postecoglou system, it's not necessarily playing to his strengths, but with Richarlison having the poor form that he's having, both obviously playing for Spurs, and he doesn't seem to be hitting the heights for Brazil either. So that was kind of the one thing he had going in his favour, really, was the form that he did have for Brazil and how well he was playing for them. But having seen him over the international break already miss a sitter, I think his place is gone pretty much in that Spurs team, for the time being at least. And Heung-min Son is going to adopt that number 9 position. And I think as long as he plays that position, I think he's going to be a fantastic option. And I think he's going to take the penalties for Spurs as well. There was a little bit of a murmuring that Richarlison would do it. I don't really know who else they could have take it, really. It just feels sort of set in stone for me, really, for Son to be taking those penalties off of Kane. Obviously, Tottenham haven't had one yet for us to work out who's going to take it. I wanted to look at the stats from the 21-22 season. I know, obviously, that's skipping a season in last year, but that was the last season he was fully fit. He had 23 goals, obviously won the Golden Boot. I think that was alongside Mo Salah that he did that. 7 assists. And one thing I want to say is, across his career, certainly in his time for Tottenham, Son has really shown himself as an absolutely elite finisher, and he consistently outperforms his expected goals. He's one of the few players in the Premier League that does that, alongside what appears to be Taiwo Awoniyi, who I'm going to talk about later on in this video. But if he can match those kind of numbers that he did in the Golden Boot season, 0.70 expected returns per 90 he had that season, he's on 0.64 this season. So he's pulling very similar numbers to the year he won the Golden Boot. And that's only after a few fixtures as well. I think as the Spurs team progress under Ange, I think they're only going to get better and serve Son well for goals and assists as well. So yeah, I just think he's looking a really solid option. Now, would I bring him into my team? I think if you're on a wild card, yeah, he's worth picking. I think if you've got Rashford, it's a tough call, really. I don't think it's worth the luxury transfer to go Rashford to Son just because you don't fancy Rashford, because ultimately they've scored very similarly so far this season. And I think going forwards, they probably will score similarly across the season. If, however, you're not happy with one of your midfielders, maybe Martinelli, someone like that, and you're looking for a replacement, I think Son is your man. The next player I'm going to talk about, I talk about him in every video really, but I think Bryan Mbeumo is absolutely awesome. He's gone now to 6.8 million. I think he could potentially rise even more over the upcoming game weeks, but I still think at that price he's great value. Now, this week the fixture's not ideal. Newcastle away. Newcastle have not had a great defensive record so far this season. I think there's two narratives you could spin for that game, really. Newcastle probably need the international break to refine themselves defensively. Probably have Botman back in the team as well, so they could well keep a clean sheet in that game. But every time I've watched Brentford, particularly Mbeumo and Wissa working together up front, they look absolutely lethal. And if you look at Mbeumo's stats, he's number 1 in the league for expected goal involvement at the moment, above even Erling Haaland, who looks to be having another record-breaking season in terms of goals, or certainly on track to do that. He's repeating per game exactly what he did last season in terms of goals, and Mbeumo's better than him for expected goal involvements. He's just nailed to start every game. No worries about minutes. Brentford aren't in Europe. He takes the pens. Odd free kick as well. Obviously takes the pens off Tony, and then the odd free kick mixed in with some other Brentford players as well. Seems to be linking up really well with Wissa. And in terms of upcoming fixtures, I know there's Newcastle and Man United mixed in there, but you certainly fancy Brentford to score in both those games, certainly with how good they've been looking. 4 goals in 4 starts so far this season. His expected returns per 90 is way and above where he was at last season as well. So he's definitely kicking on from where he was last season. He's just a brilliant option. Another guy that I'm mentioning in every video at the moment, but I'm afraid I'm repeating myself, but I really do think he's absolutely awesome. Taiwo Awoniyi. I've already made a video about him with some more in-depth stats, certainly showing how he performed last season as well. You can check that out in the description below. But when you look at his stats last season compared with other top players in the Premier League, he was on a level with them. And when you look at those expected returns per 90, we've just looked at Son and Mbeumo. We can quickly go back to Mbeumo. 0.78 expected returns per 90 this season. Son 0.64. Awoniyi is 0.83, so better than both of them. And he's 6.5 million and 4.4% ownership. Got Burnley away, or Burnley's home, sorry, coming up. Man City away next, tough fixture, but he seems to be fixture-proof. He scored at both Old Trafford and the Emirates and got an assist at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea as well. So he seems to be able to return against the top teams as well as the lower level ones. And when you look at the other 4 fixtures outside of Man City away, you've got to fancy goals for Forest in all of those games. So 8 goals in his last 8 Premier League appearances. The list goes on as to reasons as to why you should pick him. It's a tough call, really, whether you sell one of your current strikers for him. I think, like similarly with the Son transfer, I think it might be a bit of a luxury move. But again, if you're on your wild card, get ahead because he looks really good. And with those fixtures coming up, he's an unbelievable option. Now, I've seen a lot of players selling Bruno Fernandes, and I can't for the life of me work out why. He's dropped to 8.4 million. And remember that list we showed of Mbumo for expected goal involvements in the league? Fernandes was 4th on that list, despite only getting 1 goal and 1 assist in total, having what most people, well, the people that have sold him are considering him to be disappointing so far. I just don't see it myself. He's creating chances and looking dangerous regardless of how Man United are playing. And you look at those underlying numbers, 2.1 expected goals, 2.5 expected assists, 1 goal, 1 assist across the season, 0.94 expected returns per 90, so stronger than any of the other players we've looked at. It looks absolutely fantastic in my opinion, and I think, yeah, just in general, I think he looks really, really strong. Similarly to Mbumo, now to start every game, you don't have to worry about that. He takes the penalties, the odd free kick, and I think with Mason Mount being injured, obviously that's disappointing in my opinion as a Man United fan for the team, but for Bruno Fernandes and obviously with Amrabat signing, he's going to be pushed right up front in that number 10 position. And with Højlund being back fit as well, he's actually got a striker to get on the end of the chances that he's creating. So I expect those expected returns to turn into actual returns as the season goes on. And I can't for the life of me work out why people are selling him. Okay, my final player to buy. This might be a bit of a controversial one amongst some of the FPL community. So let me know in the comments what you think of this. But at the moment, I'm really struggling to work out a goalkeeper that I really like. Lots of teams are conceding goals. That tends to be the sort of shift at the start of the season anyway. There are more goals at the start of the season, and as teams sort of work out a tactic and just get more solid in their structure, they tend to keep more clean sheets towards the end of the season. And I think that's sort of happening with Newcastle at the moment. And let's not forget, they've had a really tough start in terms of fixtures as well. They've got those tough fixtures out of the way now. Botman, I think, is going to return to fitness after the international break. He's been a massive loss for them. Especially, you know, he's their best defender basically, and he's not been playing. So I think with Botman back in the team, a home fixture v Brentford could be the one to get them back on track with clean sheets. And look at his price, right? It's 5.5 million. I know that's level with Ederson in terms of price, the most expensive keeper in the game. But the thing that Pope has over Ederson is the fact he makes saves. This season he's got 3.5 saves per game. Last season he made 2.4 saves per game. Save percentage is a bit down this season, as you can see in the stats, but you can look at those in more detail yourself. But my opinion, I think Pope and Newcastle are going to improve post this international break, and I don't really think money in a squad at the moment is an issue for most players. So 5.5 million, I think most players can probably stretch to that as their goalkeeper. Certainly if they're on a wild card or looking to switch their keeper, I think they can probably afford Nick Pope. I think going forwards, he's probably the best goalkeeper. Now, in terms of players to avoid, unfortunately, I'm going to repeat myself again. I've looked, you know, at a lot of players that are popular amongst the game at the moment. I think there's a hell of a lot of good options in the game, and not really many players that a lot of people own that I'd suggest avoiding. One of them, though, is the Arsenal defence. Now, I've already spoken about them in my previous buy and avoid video, but I think going forward, I've not seen enough from that Arsenal defence so far to suggest that they're likely to keep clean sheets. Basically, in my opinion, it's down to Arteta and the fact that he's not playing the settled back four that started last season. You know, Ben White, Saliba, Gabriel, Zinchenko. Goalkeeper I don't think matters too much, but that settled back four really got Arsenal towards that title challenge and obviously keeping clean sheets. If Arteta resorts to that after the international break, I think they could look more attractive, but he's certainly not been playing that lineup so far. I think with the injuries they've got across their back line, it could mean Arteta's more likely to play that settled back four, but at the moment we don't have any evidence of that. He's not played that lineup so far. A little bit worried about their defence going forward on that basis. Finally then, and again I'm repeating myself with the Brighton attack, but Enciso's gone, he's injured. Ansu Fati comes in to replace him. So, you know, the last video I had Enciso in there obviously had his unfortunate knee injury. Now been replaced with Ansu Fati. So you've got all these players that could potentially play 4 attacking positions for Brighton. The fact that they're in Europe too, don't get me wrong, they look absolutely fantastic going forward. Really fast-flowing team with great players. All of these guys are fantastic players, no doubt in my mind, but you just don't know who's going to start. And whilst Brighton might be looking good on the eye, and certainly in terms of the expected data as well, they're looking really good, you just can't back any of them to play. And personally, as an FPL player, I don't really touch the Man City midfield either for the similar reason, as you just don't know who's going to play. You're better off picking the tried and trusted players that probably take some penalties and just play 90 minutes, and you don't have to doubt their ability to start. Someone like Mbumo, for example, in my opinion at least, is going to be a much better asset than someone like João Pedro or Ansu Fati across the season. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the Brighton attack. All right, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm just back off my holiday in Croatia. So yeah, my last video was filmed in my apartment. I'm back in my bedroom now. I really enjoyed my international break. I hope you did too. Let me know in the comments what your plans are for the upcoming game week. If you enjoyed this video, please leave me a like rating and subscribe to the channel, which should be just there. And I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.